Judd, you are here, as I understand it, representing the border agents. Is that true?
That's correct, yes.
And how many border agents would that be that you would represent?
Roughly 16,500.
Mr. Homan, you were asked if the law had changed, and I think your answer was that it had not changed. Is that correct?
When it comes to the transportation of unaccompanied alien children.
But you wouldn't deny that the enforcement policies of this administration have changed, would you?
The enforcement policies have changed.
Have changed. Mr. Crane, you are here representing the ICE agents, as I understand it. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And how many ICE agents would you be representing?
Approximately 5,000, sir.
Of those agents, are you familiar with whether or not Homeland Security Secretary Johnson conducted a town hall meeting at a DHS office in Fairfax, Virginia, April 23rd, 2014, with ICE agents and officers present?
Yes, sir. I have spoken to the officers that were present at the meeting.
To your knowledge, did the ICE agents voice strong concerns to the Secretary that gang members, other public safety threats, and criminals are being released due to new administration DHS policies, such as deferred action for childhood arrivals and John Morton's arrest priorities memorandum?
Yes, sir. That's what was reported to me.
And did these officers and agents tell the Secretary that the administration's policies have tied their hands, preventing them from keeping many dangerous criminals off the streets, and that, in their opinion, as boots-on-the-ground officers in the field, the new policies are a failure?
Yes, sir. And I would add to that that is the message that every DHS and ICE leader is hearing at every field office we have. When they go up for these town hall meetings, officers and agents are standing up and saying exactly the same thing each and every time. These policies are not working.
Were these statements by ICE agents and officers clear enough for Secretary Johnson to understand them, and were they forceful enough for him to remember?
The statements that were relayed to me, absolutely, yes, sir.
And it would probably surprise you that a month later, when he was testifying before us, he couldn't remember those statements and how they were phrased. Mr. Judd, your testimony, as I understood it a little bit earlier, representing that 16,500 border agents, was that from the interviews that you're getting, they are telling you, these individuals coming over, that one of the primary reasons they're coming is because they think there's a lenient enforcement policy in place in the country. Is that a fair representation?
When we were on break, I made a couple phone calls to agents that are in the processing centers, and they reiterated exactly that.
Do any of those interviews reflect that they're coming here equally because of this violence, an uptake in violence that's taken place?
That is one of the other reasons reporting, yes.
Do you have any evidence, Mr. Rice had just mentioned, about this uptick in violence that's kind of been alleged here taking place since 2009? Do any of you have anything you can supply to the committee today of any particular uptick in the violence that's happened in all of these countries that's taken place? And I don't hear anybody. And then
I could speak to that. In Honduras, as I believe I mentioned earlier, the killings of children are way up in recent months.
And can you also speak to cites that the data from the National Police of Guatemala, for example, shows the lowest level of violence now since 2004? Would you dispute those figures?
I'm less familiar with the situation in Guatemala, but I do know that the number of people reporting, the UN agency that did a survey of children that were leaving, something like 400 children, reported that something like 60% had actionable claims for asylum.
Okay. And, Mr. Chairman, I would just end by saying that the biggest complaint I've heard today from those supporting the administration is that the title of this hearing was wrong. We just have the representative from 16,500 border agents who say it's not wrong. And also we heard somebody say, let's take a vote. Well, as I understood Mr. Judd's testimony early, he said we need to have catch and release policy go away, enforce the law, not grant special status, and increase our manpower or protect our manpower shortage. And if we can get a law to that effect, I think all of us will have to vote on that today. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The Chair thanks, gentlemen, and the Chair asking